All right, so let's get right into it. Today we're going deep on this whole power struggle brewing, between President Trump and the Senate
Yeah.
over his cabinet picks for the second term. And it all boils down to this phrase in the Constitution, advice and consent, which honestly, I feel like most people have probably never even thought about.
It was like this super obscure thing from way back when. But suddenly it's front page news. It's kind of wild.
It really is. And we've got some really interesting articles that you sent in that I think lay it all out really well. So
Yeah.
maybe the best place to start is this whole Matt Gaetz thing.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you've got Trump nominating Gaetz to be attorney general.
I know.
Can you imagine, Gaetz, of all people, the former congressman? I mean, he's known for,
Yeah. Colorful personality.
let's just say stirring the pot, right,
Yeah.
as the nation's top lawyer. I mean, even Republicans were like, what is happening?
It was such a curveball, right?
Yeah.
Like even for Trump, it was like, whoa, where did that come from?
Totally. And then you've got the Senate pushing back hard. They're like, hold on, we have some concerns here.
Big concerns.
Yeah, there are all these reports about, senators getting ready to vote against him, like legit worried about what a confirmation hearing would even look like.
Yeah. I mean, you can imagine that circus, right? And then all the allegations against Gaetz.
Exactly. It was like a recipe for disaster. So even though Gaetz ended up, withdrawing, it feels like the Senate was about to really flex its muscle and say no.
Oh, absolutely. They were ready to draw a line in the sand and say this far and no further.
So what does that tell us about this whole advice and consent power? Is it just a formality, or does the Senate actually have some teeth here?
Oh, no, they have teeth for sure. The Constitution gives them this power to, say yes or no to the president's picks, and there's a reason for that. It's a check on the president's power. It's to make sure that we've got qualified people in these super important positions.
It's like a safeguard, right? Like making sure we don't just have a bunch of yes men running the show.
Right, exactly.
It's interesting, though, because it seems like this Gaetz situation was just the tip of the iceberg.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you look at some of the other names Trump is floating for his cabinet, it's like a who's who of controversial figures.
It's a wild list.
Pete Hegseth for defense secretary, the Fox News guy who's had those assault allegations against him.
I mean,
And then Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for Health and Human Services. He's the one who's all anti-vaccine and facing misconduct claims, too.
yeah, it's like he's going out of his way to pick the most divisive people possible.
And then there's Tulsi Gabbard, the former Democrat who's now, spouting Russian talking points.
Right.
And he wants to put her in charge of national intelligence.
It's like, what is happening? Is this real life?
I know. It's like he's trying to troll the entire country.
I mean, you got to wonder, what's the strategy here?
Right. It's so different from his first term, where he at least tried to pick people who, had some experience.
Yeah, he went with a lot of establishment figures back then.
So what's the deal now? Is it all about loyalty over everything else?
It seems that way, right? It's
Yeah.
like he only wants people who are going to be 100% on his side no matter what.
And he's not even trying to be subtle about it. I mean, he's making these announcements so fast. It's like bam, bam, bam.
Right. It's like he's trying to shock everyone into submission.
Yeah. And it's definitely shaking things up. But where does that leave the senators who are caught in the middle? I mean, they have to be feeling the heat.
Oh, they are for sure. Especially the Republicans. They're walking a tightrope here.
Right. Because on the one hand, they want to support their president.
Of course.
But on the other hand, they swore an oath to uphold the Constitution. And that includes, providing advice and consent on these appointments.
It's a tough spot to be in for sure.
So are we seeing any cracks in that Republican support? Are there any senators who are like, I don't think so?
Yeah, there are definitely some signs of dissent. You've got senators like Mike Rounds who are basically saying, hey, hold on. We have a duty to actually scrutinize these nominees. Yeah. This isn't just a rubber stamp process.
Right. So they're basically reminding Trump that they have a job to do. But we all know Trump, he's not exactly known for backing down.
Yeah, it's true.
So what happens when the Senate pushes back? I mean, what can he do?
Well, he's already floated this idea of using recess appointments, which is basically a way to bypass the Senate entirely. He can just appoint people while they're not in session.
Wait, so he can just ignore the whole advice and consent thing?
Well, it's a bit of a legal gray area. It
For
would
fun.
definitely lead to some serious court battles.
So it sounds like he's basically looking for a loophole, right?
Yeah, it's like he's trying to find any way he can to get around the Senate and just do what he wants.
And some people are even saying this could lead to a full-blown constitutional crisis.
Yeah, the stakes are high for sure.
It's scary to think about. I mean, it's not just about politics anymore. It's about the very foundation of our government.
Right, and it affects all of us.
Yeah.
We're talking about who's running the departments that make decisions about our health care, our national security, everything.
It's like this whole thing is a giant game of chess with the future of our country hanging in the balance.
Yeah. And we're all kind of just watching it play out, hoping for the best.
It's definitely a lot to unpack, but luckily we've got some more time to dive into all this, so stay tuned because we're just getting started.
Yeah, this is going to be good. So it really begs the question, right? Like, what can the Senate actually do if Trump just keeps pushing the envelope?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they can reject nominees, but what if he just tries to sidestep the whole process? Like with those recess appointments, is there any way to stop him?
Well, they do have one pretty powerful weapon up their sleeve, and that's the power of the purse. Remember that from like high school civics?
Oh, yeah, vaguely.
Basically, the Senate, along with the House Kilme,
Hmm.
they control the federal budget, so they can like withhold funding for stuff they don't like, including things that Trump's appointees want to do.
Ah, so they could kind of hit him where it hurts.
Exactly. It's not something they would do lightly, obviously,
Uh-huh.
but it's a pretty big lever they can pull if they really want to.
Right, so it's like a nuclear option, a last resort if things get really bad. But there have to be other ways they can push back, right? Things that aren't quite so drastic.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Another big one is oversight authority. So they can basically investigate the actions of the executive branch, like the president and his appointees.
So they can like put Trump and his administration under a microscope?
Exactly. They can hold hearings, demand documents, call witnesses to testify under oath.
So it's like they can shine a light on any shady stuff that's going on.
Right, and those hearings are public, so everyone gets to see what's happening behind closed doors.
It's like a way to keep things transparent and hold the president accountable.
Exactly.
But you know, Trump, he's a master of like spinning things to his advantage. So how's he playing this whole thing out in the public eye?
Well, pretty much what you'd expect. He's painting it as an attack by the deep state and the establishment.
Mm.
You know, they're trying to sabotage his presidency and all that.
Right. It's always a conspiracy with him.
And he's really pushing this us versus them narrative. You know, it's him and his supporters against the evil swamp of Washington.
And I bet his supporters are eating it up.
Oh, absolutely. They're probably bombarding their senators with calls and emails right now, telling them to back Trump no matter what.
So those poor senators are caught between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, they're trying to balance their constitutional duties with the demands of their base. That's a tough spot to be in.
What happens if they cave to the pressure, though, or if Trump just ignores them completely?
That's where things could get really messy. I mean, it could lead to a constitutional crisis if the president just starts ignoring the Senate and doing whatever he wants.
It's a scary thought. I mean, it makes you feel kind of helpless, like we're just pawns in this big political game.
It's easy to feel that way. But remember, you have a voice in all of this.
Yeah, but what can we do? It's not like our individual voices can really make a difference.
You'd be surprised. The Constitution gives you a lot of power, and it's your responsibility to use it.
Okay, so how do we make our voices heard amidst all this chaos?
Well, it starts with staying informed. Don't just get your news from one source, you know?
Right, don't live in an echo chamber.
Exactly. Look at things from different perspectives, even ones you disagree with. The more you know, the better equipped you are to participate in the process.
Okay, so step one is to become informed citizens. But then what do we do with that knowledge?
Well, there are a lot of things you can do.
Yeah.
You can contact your senators and representatives directly, tell them what you think about these nominations, you know, urge them to uphold their constitutional duties.
So, like, actually reach out to our elected officials.
Yeah, you can also attend town hall meetings, participate in protests, write letters to the editor, talk to your friends and family about these issues.
So basically just don't be silent, make your voice heard.
Exactly.
It's like we're not just watching this unfold, we actually have a role to play in how it all ends up.
Exactly.
But it can be so overwhelming, you know? It's like,
Uh,
how much can our individual voices really matter in all of this?
I get it. It's easy to feel like just one person can't make a difference, but that's not true.
But it's like we're going up against like this massive political machine.
It's true. Change takes time and effort. It doesn't happen overnight.
So where do we even start?
Well, it could be as simple as having conversations with people who see things differently than you, you know?
Like actually listening to each other.
Exactly. Go to those local government meetings, volunteer for a cause you care about, support organizations that are fighting for democracy, you know?
Little things can make a big difference.
Exactly. Every action counts.
You know what's interesting to me is that this whole advice and consent thing, it's not just about the Senate.
Right.
It's like it applies to all of us as citizens. We have a responsibility to be informed, to speak up, to hold our leaders accountable.
That's a really great point.
Yeah,
It's like we're all giving our own advice and consent on how our country should be run.
I like that.
And that's how it's supposed to be.
Mhm.
The Constitution gives us the framework, but it's up to us to make it work.
It's a lot of responsibility.
It is, but it's also incredibly empowering, right?
Yep.
Knowing that we have a say in our own future.
Absolutely. This whole deep dive has been so eye-opening.
Yeah, it's been great.
We started with this like obscure phrase in the Constitution, and now we're talking about like the future of democracy.
It all connects.
It really does. It can be a lot to wrap your head around, but I honestly feel more empowered now, not less.
That's what it's all about, right? Knowledge is power.
For sure. So to all our listeners out there, we hope you've learned something from this deep dive into this whole power struggle between the president and the Senate.
It's a fascinating topic.
It really is, and it's not over yet. So stay tuned, keep those questions coming, and most importantly, stay engaged. This is your democracy too.
Couldn't have said it better myself.